Midnight over the Atlantic. The cabin was quiet, until the intercom snapped alive with a voice that carried fear it couldn't hide. If there are any combat pilots on board, identify yourself immediately. Ethan Cole jolted awake in seat 8A, heart hammering before he even understood why. A flight attendant hurried past, whispering to her partner, "The captain can't hold the controls, we're losing systems." Ethan sat frozen. He hadn't worn a uniform in 3 years. He'd promised his daughter he'd left danger behind. But the tremor in the plane, the rising panic around him, the young woman beside him gripping her armrest, none of it let him stay seated. "Sir, are you okay?" she asked, voice shaking. "No," Ethan whispered, "but I know what they need." The cabin held its breath as he stood, every step toward the front pulling him back into a past he tried to bury. And that was the moment everything changed. Want the full story? Like this video and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so you never miss the next chapter. The moment Ethan stepped into the narrow aisle, the entire cabin shifted its attention toward him. Whispered questions rippled from row to row, some hopeful, some skeptical, and one voice, sharp, dismissive, cut straight through the air. "That guy." A man in business class, mid-40s, expensive suit, eyes full of disdain, leaned into the aisle as if inspecting merchandise. "He can barely keep himself awake. You're telling me he's supposed to save us?" Ethan didn't look at him, but the words dug in. He wasn't dressed like a hero. He wasn't trying to be one. He just kept moving toward the front, step by step, forcing himself not to think about the promise he'd already broken. A flight attendant hurried up beside him. "Sir, come with me. They're waiting." The cabin trembled again. Overhead bins rattled. A few passengers gasped, clutching armrests. Somewhere near row 12 a baby wailed. The atmosphere thickened into something tight, electric, and unbeargiving. As Ethan reached the bulkhead, the man from business class pushed himself halfway into the aisle, blocking him. "You can't seriously let this guy into the cockpit," he snapped at the flight attendant. "What if he panics? What if he makes it worse? I paid for a safe flight. This is absurd." The attendant tried to keep her voice steady. "Sir, please sit down." "No. Not until someone competent explains why we're relying on some." He scanned Ethan from head to toe. Exhausted economy passenger instead of a real pilot. Ethan finally turned to him. "Move." The man huffed, offended. "Excuse me." "You heard me," Ethan said quietly. "Move. People are depending on me." Something in Ethan's tone, not loud, not aggressive, just absolute, made the man falter. The attendant stepped between them and pushed the man back gently but firmly. "Sit down," she repeated. "Or you become the problem we handle next." The man sank into his seat, still muttering, but he didn't block the aisle again. Inside the cockpit, the smell of overheated electronics and stress filled the space. The captain lay slumped, barely conscious. The first officer's hands shook as he struggled to keep the plane level. Warning lights flashed a frantic red rhythm across the panels. The moment Ethan stepped in, he felt the shift. From passenger to pilot, from father trying to disappear into anonymity to the man he had once been trained to become. Not because he wanted to, but because nobody else could. The first officer looked over his shoulder, eyes wide. "Tell me you can actually do this." "I can," Ethan said. "But we don't have time to convince each other." The plane lurched. Hard. The cockpit tilted left, then right, like a ship losing its keel in a storm. The first officer fought the controls with everything he had. Hydraulics, fading. Autopilot, dead. Guy blacker than ink. Ethan slid into the jump seat. "Walk me through what still works." The first officer didn't hesitate. Fear sharpened him into clarity. "Manual reversion only. Right engine sluggish. We've got one chance to descend clean." "Then that's what we'll take," Ethan said. The radio crackled, barely audible over the rising wind. "Air Atlantic 447 confirm status." The first officer swallowed hard. Ethan leaned in and answered for him. "Dual hydraulic failure. Captain incapacitated. Beginning emergency descent. There was a pause, just long enough to feel like judgment, before the tower replied, "We're clearing all airspace. Your priority one." While Ethan stabilized the descent, the cabin behind him spiraled into its own kind of chaos. A woman sobbed into her hands. A teenager whispered prayers. A man clutched his briefcase like it contained someone he loved. Every person dealt with fear in a different key. And then, loud, aggressive, unmistakable, rose the same voice from before. "This is insane," the business class man shouted. "We're trusting a stranger. What if he's lying? What if he gets us all killed?" Passengers near him recoiled, not wanting his panic to spread. A mother with twins put her hands over their ears. An elderly man muttered, "Someone shut him up." The flight attendant approached him again. "Sir, you're scaring everyone. Sit down." "No," he barked. "This is negligence. I demand to speak to someone in charge. Someone actually qualified. Not some washed-up nobody." He didn't get to finish. From row 9, Marcus, the retired army veteran, stood up slowly. Not rushed, not angry, just certain. "I'm in charge now," Marcus said. "And you're going to sit your entitled self down before you make things worse." The man turned red. "You don't talk to me like that." Marcus stepped closer. "Son, I've dealt with men louder, meaner, and smarter than you. They didn't shake me. You definitely won't." Passengers murmured in agreement. The man looked around, and for the first time realized no one supported him. Not even the other business class flyers. He sat down. Hard. And the cabin exhaled. Back in the cockpit, Ethan adjusted the throttles. "We're descending too slow. Increase pitch 2 degrees. The first officer hesitated. "That'll strain the hydraulics. They're already failing. We need altitude now." He obeyed. The plane dove faster than comfort allowed. Outside, the Atlantic wind screamed across the windows. The fuselage groaned, metal bending under physics it wasn't built for. Then violence. Sudden drop. A sickening tilt. Alarms exploding into the cabin. The first officer gasped, grip slipping. "We're losing it." "No," Ethan said, gripping the controls with practiced precision. "We're not." Memories flooded him. Not visions but instincts. The feel of an F-16 fighting crosswinds at 30,000 feet. The way pressure changed when a system failed. The exact amount of force a manual reversion could tolerate before giving up entirely. None of that belonged to the life he lived now. But it lived in him. "Hold your breath," Ethan said, not as a dramatic line but as a command. The plane bucked again, harder this time, but Ethan's hands were steady. Below them, Ireland emerged. Dark land against darker sea. "We're close," he said. "Hydraulics at 5%, the first officer whispered. "We only need one." Moments later, the plane slammed onto the runway. The impact rattled teeth and bones, but the wheels held. Sparks flew where metal scraped pavement. Passengers screamed, cried, prayed, all of it mixing into raw human sound. "We're not slowing down," the first officer yelled. "We will. Brakes are gone." "I know." The sandbed appeared ahead, those blessed red lights. Ethan killed both engines. Silence swallowed the cockpit for half a second. "Here we go," he said. The sandbed caught the aircraft like a giant hand. It wasn't gentle. It didn't need to be. The drag ripped momentum from the plane so violently that everyone inside lurched forward against their restraints. When the plane finally stopped, stillness fell. Utter and complete. Then the first officer whispered, "We're alive." In the cabin, the reaction rippled slowly. Crying, laughing, stunned silence. Some hugged strangers. Some stared straight ahead, unable to process what had just happened. And one man, one very specific man, sat trembling in business class, pale as paper. The same man who had mocked Ethan. The man who tried to block him. The man who nearly caused panic to spread like wildfire. Passengers glared at him as they passed. one woman murmured. You almost made everything worse. Another shook her head. Shameful. Marcus stopped beside him. Remember when you said you paid for a safe flight? You're welcome. Emergency crews entered. Cameras flashed. News already spread online. Within minutes, flight attendants began taking statements. The angry man pushed forward. I want to file a complaint. The lead attendant cut him off. Good. We'll file one too. For obstruction during an active emergency. Expect to be contacted by federal authorities. He froze. What? I didn't. You interfered, she said. You created panic. And you jeopardized the crew's ability to control the cabin. Passengers around him nodded. Some pointed their phones toward him. They had recordings. His face drained. You can't. This is ridiculous. But she was already turning away to help others. He stood alone, surrounded by the consequences he had earned. Outside, Ethan descended the evacuation slide last. Cold Irish air hit him like truth, sharp, undeniable. Medics brushed past him. Fire crews inspected the fuselage. Reporters clustered at the perimeter, shouting questions. But Ethan only heard one voice. Marcus's. He walked up beside Ethan, hands in his jacket pockets. You know, he said, guys like that one? They always show their true colors when something breaks. Ethan exhaled. He almost derailed everything. Yeah, Marcus replied, glancing back at the man now arguing with airport police. But now he gets to explain his behavior to people with badges and paperwork. Ethan followed his gaze. The man was red-faced, gesturing wildly. Two officers stepping in, guiding him aside to speak with him formally. Cameras caught everything. His downfall wasn't dramatic. It wasn't violent. But it was public, humiliating, and entirely his fault. And it was enough. Ethan turned away, exhausted but steady. The night had been long. The fear had been real. But somewhere inside all of it, something else had returned. A piece of himself he thought he'd abandoned forever. Plane was safe. People were alive. And the man who tried to tear him down now faced the one thing he couldn't argue with. Accountability. And that was only the beginning of what he was about to face next. When the last ambulance pulled away and the runway lights dimmed to their usual quiet glow, Ethan finally stepped aside from the crowd. The night felt different, lighter somehow, though the weight of what had happened still rested on his shoulders. He watched passengers reunite with loved ones through the terminal windows, each embrace a reminder of why he had stood up in the first place. Claire approached with a soft, tired smile. They're calling you a miracle, she said. Ethan shook his head. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away. That's what makes it remarkable, she replied. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked toward the grounded aircraft, half buried in the sandbed, a quiet monument to a choice he never expected to make again. For years he'd tried to outrun the part of himself that knew how to step into chaos. But tonight showed him that strength wasn't something he had left behind. It was something he carried, even when it scared him. As he turned to leave, a faint breeze swept across the tarmac, lifting the edge of his jacket like an unspoken acknowledgement of what he'd reclaimed. And somewhere inside, he knew this night would follow him home, not as a burden, but as proof that courage doesn't disappear. Wait. If this story moved you, tap like, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales to help the channel grow and bring you more unforgettable journeys.